Okay, call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Ms. Spiritu? Mr. Gorbutz?
Here.
Ms. Laird? Here. Mr. Price?
Here.
Mr. Ray? Here.
Approve or amend and sign minutes of the regular meeting held August 9th, 2021. We have a motion to do that.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Laird,
Second.
second by Mr. Price. Are there any questions or concerns regarding the minutes? Roll call, please.
Ms. Laird?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Ray? Yes. Mr. Gorbutz?
Yes, motion carried. Walk-on items?
I do have one, Mr. Gorbet's board's pleasure. I had a late resignation this afternoon. I placed one at each of your places. Terry Fielding is retiring and resigning with intent to retire. That will go with us on item 4, so we don't need to change any numbers. We already have a resignation there, so we will add that if it's okay with you. Thank you.
Legislative report.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Before I start, let me explain the penalty box here. It's a sensitive time. This time of year, my asthma is flared badly, so you're going to hear me cough tonight. I have had a PCR test so that I can confirm and make all of you feel comfortable in knowing I do not have COVID. I don't have anything that's contagious, but I also understand everyone's sensitivity right now. So that's all it is, just asthma. With that, this is truly complete coincidence that the report that I have for you tonight is about masks. There's been some questions as to whether or not the governor's authority to provide mask mandates has been completely removed. Can that happen without a school board making that mandatory? Are there other means for that to happen? And the answer is this. The legislation that went into effect June 23rd, this summer, 21, it's called Senate Bill 22. It does not remove the state government's ability to put on a mask mandate. What it does do is this. It expanded the number of people involved in making the decision, and it established the length of time of a mandate, how long it can be put into place, and then it put together a means of approving extensions at that time. So first, it established the Ohio Health Oversight and Advisory Committee, which provides legislative oversight to the ordering of mandates that were previously left with the governor and the Ohio Department of Health. So it just expanded oversight. More people are involved in that decision now. It's not removed from that level of government. And the committee, I thought you'd be interested to know, it's to be a bipartisan committee. And what it consists of is this. There are 3 members of the Senate. 2 of the members are majority party. 1 member is minority party. 3 members of the House. 2 members of the majority party. 1 member of the minority party. That's the structure of it. And on the timelines is this. If the Department of Health issues a special order, then the General Assembly, which is that legislative collective body, may rescind the order in whole or in part. If the General Assembly rescinds an order, the department cannot reissue the order for a period of 60 calendar days. After 60 calendar days, then the governor, on behalf of the Ohio Department of Health, may submit a request to the General Assembly to permit the department to reissue the previously rescinded order. So that ability at the state level is still there. It's just more broad-based. And there's some timelines that are put into place. The intention behind it, everything is written, is to provide a little more checks and balance within our government. So I thought that would be interesting. It's a hot topic right now, and not everyone knows about the pieces of legislation that gets passed and the details in them. I hope for everyone at home, too, this provides you some information that maybe you didn't have before. And Megan, I'm going to cite the actual website for the 134th General Assembly of Ohio. I'll give you the copies after, but folks, you can go right to their website and read exactly what I've given you in a little bit more detail. Do you have questions for me on it this evening? Okay.
Was that actually been enacted?
It has. Yes, June 23rd.
So have the committees been formed? Have the members been selected?
I believe so.
We know who they are.
I do not, but I'll report back to you. I'll get that to you.
Just in case we need to provide some input, or if that's permitted, I don't know.
I think that's a great question, especially for our viewers at home. You know, the common household's very concerned, but doesn't always know how to participate. So, in the legislative body, Representative Gary Click represents the 88th District of Ohio, and our senator is Bill Reinecke. So that's the legislative body that writes the rules. And whenever there's an issue with the rules that have been written that you think you want to support or oppose for whatever reason, as of right now, those are two individuals that you'd voice your personal concerns to. Or, sometimes we have, as a collective body, have done that as well. When we collectively agree on something that's good or perhaps detrimental to public schools. So, maybe what we could do, just thought of this. We do have a backdrop, maybe going forward. If I have a piece to report on, we could have on the overhead the contact names and information websites. I don't know if the camera gets a good view of that.
If we make it big enough font, we could probably get it up there.
Yeah, but that way people know exactly where to direct those concerns to. That's the process of local government, Alex. It's exactly what people would do.
But have the members of this committee that's going to decide whether it should be, have they been selected?
They
or
have.
is Gary Click?
No. It's for the whole assembly. All 88 districts are part of it. 3 members from the Senate, 3 members from the representatives. They are appointed. President of the majority party appoints theirs. President of the minority party. That's not called president, but it would be the speaker for the minority party.
Minority whip? Or not?
Yes, is it's the speaker. I will get that for you too. This will be a great government lesson for all of us. a good refresher in that detail of exactly what that chain of command is. But they are appointed, Alex.
Okay. Does that conclude your?
That concludes the report tonight. Thank you.
Okay. At our work sessions, and tonight is one of those, typically we don't have a section for the public to address the board, but tonight we're going to add that section. Anybody in the audience can address the board with a 5-minute time limit on any topic that you feel is pertinent at this time. If you do address the board, we ask you go to the podium and state your name and address for the record. And looks like we have somebody who wants to address the board.
Yes, sir. My name's Steve Gibson, 2240 Woodmont Drive. Thank you for having me and giving me a moment. I hope you're relieved to find out that I'm not here to beat you guys up on masks, but otherwise, hopefully to plant some seeds of wisdom. So my concern is possible curriculum coming in Fremont City Schools, and I'm just going to lay some ideas out here versus definitions word for word. Theory is a system of ideas intended to explain something, especially one based on a general principles independent of the thing being explained. So a theory is a hypothesis, an educated guess. Educated, but still a guess. Race We know what race means. Each of the major groupings into which humankind is considered to be divided on the basis of physical characteristics or shared ancestry. And critical, there's many definitions for critical, but when we talk about critical, we're talking about expressing adverse or disapproving comments or passing judgment. So that brings me to this critical race theory that's going around. To understand critical race theory, we got to first understand critical theory. It came out in the 30s in Frankfurt School of Sociology in Germany. Basic idea of the critical theory is that the social problems are influenced and created more by societal structures and cultural assumptions than by an individual or psychological factors. So that takes, it's an ideal that's taken accountability away from some things that probably shouldn't be. But, the premise underlying the ideology is correct. There are disparities, and they're shocking, some of the things that happen all over the place. But this ideology is very politicized. This ideology is malleable to fit what it wants. This ideology is ideology. It's not fact. It's not, you'll find proven facts in any argument. Somebody can throw in facts here and there. I don't think that this particular subject seeks equality or justice, to be honest with you. I think it categorizes people as it shouldn't. And, one of the biggest tools of this theory is if you're not with me, you're against me. If you're against me, I'm going to silence you. That's a lot of what we're seeing nowadays. I don't know why any school district would take this on, maybe for funding. I can understand that if you're in a pinch, right? Or you really want students to judge each other based on appearance. I don't believe that. I think it's my belief that if Fremont Schools has to take this on, you have to equip our students properly. If they're supposed to take this and they're mandated to take this, you need to mandate them first to understand critical thinking. You need to teach them about fallacy. You need to teach them about being misled, distracted. You can't have critical theory without the ability to think critically. And critical theory is college level education. It's idealistic, it's politicized, it's an activist movement, okay? So I think our children really need prepared for this. If you got to do it, you need to have them take critical thinking first and understand exactly what they're looking at, and help them realize that not everybody wants to tell them the truth. That's what I want to leave you guys with, respectfully. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to respond?
Want me to respond?
Yeah, if you could.
Okay. Mr. Mollis, Mr. Gorbitz has asked me to respond kind of to what Mr. Gibson, if you give me just a moment. First of all, thank you for coming. And really do appreciate it. That's what this meeting is for. We really appreciate it. And it takes a little courage to do that. So we admire that as well. Also, let you know, and there's no official movement to do anything with critical race theory in Fremont City Schools. We very strictly follow the state's curriculum, and it's very established, very well known. And I think this board over the last 3 or 4 months has probably done this. We've said it in very, very, quite a few different ways that we're not going down that road. Now, but I just want to know, you make a great point about critical thinking. We need thinkers, and also an age appropriateness to the whole thing. So I just want to know, I hear that very loud and clear and agree with you completely. And that's one thing that we do try to do, is make sure that we do teach them to think and analyze both sides. And maybe this is true, check facts and check sources and check, motivations and all those things. So that's certainly a thinker's skill, and we certainly work on that. But I want to guarantee you and promise you that critical race theory, as stated and described, is not something that this board or this district is about to do. Absolutely. Yes, sir. Thank you.
My name's Chris Mullis. I live at 28 Pinewood Drive in Ballville Township. And I think some of the points you made were really good. And I think when we have children in class, we want them to think convergently and divergently. And unfortunately, we have some groups that only one answer is going to fit the mold when we want them to be able to think for themselves. I thank the board this evening for allowing me the time to speak. And I want to begin by saying recently, it was brought to my attention that some of my comments may have been of a political nature. I believe that various groups, individuals, politicians, organizations use our school-age children to further their own various agendas. Two of these organizations, the NEA with 3 million members and AFT with 1.6 million members, have a huge stake in how our children are educated. Apparently, their power is used to fashion and further their own agendas. The NEA's net worth is $1.6 billion and is the largest labor group and is the largest white-collar representative in the United States. NEA spent $94 million in political donations from 1989 to 2014, with 97% of that money going to one political party. The largest source of donations, $150 million, came from donors associated with colleges and universities, with 90% of that money going to one party. So while my comments may appear to be political to some, our eyes, our ears tell us that in many instances our school-age children are used as pawns to further political agendas. And yes, I am a life member of the NEA. Recently, Oregon's Governor Kate Brown scrapped the need for high school students to demonstrate proficiency in math, reading, and writing. Excuse me, to get a diploma in a bid to bolster minority students who don't test well. This suspension will benefit Oregon's Black, Latino, Latinx, Indigenous, Asian, Pacific Islanders, tribal, and students of colors. As a side note, the term Latinx is only used by 3% of the Hispanics in the United States. As I read this article, the first term I thought of was dumbing down, a term originated in 1933 and was a movie business slang used by screenplay writers, meaning to revise so as to appeal to those of little education or intelligence. Newspapers also found this useful to help generate sales. I have printed additional information in the form of a handout, and I hope you find it informative and interesting. One final bit of information. The teachers were told to report anyone to the administration who criticized this directive. Shh, we don't want anybody to know what we're doing. If I may give you the handouts,
Yes, please.
to the members, please.
Yes, sir.
The part that didn't print out was this came from the Southwest Washington K-12 education. And one of the things I found interesting was a quote by Frederick Douglass. And he said, "It is easier to build strong children than repair broken men." Recently, in a video of many on the internet, and if you go there, you can find hundreds of school board meetings on the internet. I found it interesting that in the last 2 weeks, I was contacted by 3 people from 3 different states across America. In a video, one of many on the internet, of a Board of Education meeting I viewed, a parent spoke about the wall of liberal intimidation being taught in our schools. He felt critical race theory should not be a part of the curriculum in our classrooms across America. This father said he did not want teachers to teach his children to be bigots or that they are racist, determined by skin color. He further indicated he came to America to escape this type of Marxist philosophy, indoctrination, radicalization, and intimidation. Always understand, it is not the teacher's job to raise our children. Their job is to teach math, science, history, civics, social studies, English, reading, writing, to ensure every student receives a quality education. Do not allow educators or politicians to push highly politicized agendas on our children. Make sure teachers provide each student with a high quality of education and let parents raise the children. Again, your job is to teach the basics. I found it interesting because on the internet, there's been a big uproar in the Loudoun County Public Schools in Virginia. And I didn't realize how big this county was, but it's as big as half of Rhode Island. They have 80,000 students in this district, 97 facilities. And I found that quite interesting.
Sir, it's
One last thing, if I could. I asked several questions last time, and I was wondering when people could get answers to the questions that they have. And I have another handout for some of these questions, if I could, please. And I realized that there's two types of meetings. There's a meeting in public. There's a meeting in public, and there's a public meeting. At one meeting, we have discourse back and forth. And as I mentioned before, the last time I spoke, I hope, Mr. Detweiler, that you will take and somewhere along the line indicate and have meetings where people can come in, such as you did when you were talking about the new high school being built. And you had a very good turnout with the people with that, and have some discourse with the people here. And on one final note, when I read on the internet, on the webpage about your mask requirements, I thought that was a good job. I think that's a good way to handle it. And I know Jenny Parker here who was here last time, probably would appreciate what you did. So thank you. And board members, thank you for the opportunity.
okay. Thank you. Superintendent's report.
Yes, if I may, before we get into our work session, thank you, board. Thank you to our guests. Just a reminder, tomorrow morning, we're having our big kickoff. I'd love to have you there if you can make it. We're meeting actually at Grace Community Church over on Smith Road. We have doors open at 8. We have some light breakfast, and then the program starts at 8:30. One of those things I would like to do when I introduce you, if you can make it, is I'm asking some of my leaders to give me their favorite teacher from their own past and why that is your favorite teacher. So during the meeting, and think about that. So before we leave tonight, I'd like to get that, if I could, from each of you individually, so I can use that in my introduction tomorrow. I got a great day planned. And I would like to just kind of review quickly for the community. Our COVID plan hasn't changed. Right now, we are strongly recommending masks, encouraging masks. We will support kids if they want to wear masks. We'll help families that want to wear masks. But it is a strong recommendation, not a mandate. We will also continue all of our distancing as best we can, as we finished the last school year. We will continue to disinfect surfaces, hand washing practices, social distancing as much as possible. The only difference there and kind of the sticking point so far has been the situation with the buses. And if you haven't followed that conversation, it was a little unclear at first because there was some discrepancy between what the state said and what the federal government said. And we got kind of clarification through our attorney and also through our insurance company that in this case, the federal mandate trumps the state mandate, or the state rule. I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead of some facts. The state law says that school buses are not public transportation, but the federal regulation says that it is, and that all public transportation needs to have masks on there. So, and I have vetted this, like I said, through our attorney and through our insurance company, and so have all the other superintendents in the county. All gotten the same advice. So as of right now, that is the exception to our mandate, is that buses, while students are on buses, they will need to be masked. I know that puts some families in a tough spot, but unfortunately, that's kind of where we are. And I've wrestled with that myself, but I think it'd be irresponsible to put the district at risk if our insurance company says, well, if you do that, we can't help you. You know, you're out there on your own, and that's just something I don't think we can accept. Just trying to make sure we cover the district's interests. Quarantining is also something we're a little worried about, just so that everyone at home knows. If you are vaccinated, you will not be quarantined. Now, you have to monitor your symptoms, And if you show any symptoms, then you could be quarantined. But if you're vaccinated, you will not be quarantined. If you are masked and within 3 feet, or not less than 3 feet, you also will not be quarantined if you come in contact with a positive case. If you're unmasked, it's 6 feet. So unfortunately, in our building, 6 feet is kind of tough to do in classrooms. So that's where the sticky part will come, and I do worry about where that's going to go. We'll see. I have heard around the country, schools open. That's been the issue more than anything else, is the quarantining. So we'll get through that as best we can and work with families as much as we can. I just wanted to make sure there's any questions from the board about kind of that rollout. That's kind of what we've had now for a month or so.
I have a quick question
Yes, ma'am.
for you, John. I do know that right now a virtual option is for our older students.
Correct.
Should a younger child, K through 5, have to go into quarantining, is that available for them?
What we're going to
They
do, and
turn
I run this
on?
through our teachers union, is actually treat it just like you would a child who had tonsillitis or anything else. They will stay with their teacher and their class and have work at home. Now, the beauty of that is we've done virtual. So our teachers, and we're really going to encourage them to keep as much of their class, even as they're in seats, keep it online as well, as a support and reference for families. So if a child is quarantined at home, that'd be a fluid transition to have all the resources and information that's happening in the classroom also available to them online.
I like that. I think that'll
Yeah.
help keep that student up to pace with the rest of the students. should
Exactly
this
right.
kind of
And that's really what we decided. And I know this is where we are now. The world can turn upside down as we've all learned, but that's where we are right now. So, good question. Anybody else? I've been thinking about this a lot and talking to a lot of people. It's like I think you alluded to this, Ms. Laird, there's a government level of decision making, there's a school level of decision making, and then there's a family level of decision making. And right now, I think I know it's not popular with some, but I'm still really good with that family decision about how this happens. So that's where I'm at, philosophically and psychologically and every other way I can imagine. It's not easy, but that's where we're at. Okay. All right. Well, now the board is asked, and we have a lot to talk about. We have a guest with us, not a guest, actually. She's a familiar face. Shari Mullen is with us. She is our Diversity and Inclusion Officer, and we have been doing a lot of things and a lot of good work. And as even Mr. Gibson said, there are differences. There are things that we can do better at. So we are here to talk. Shari and I kind of talked ahead of time. We're just going to kind of have at it here. She's going to start. Maybe I'll jump in. Feel free to have questions. This is really much a workable session. So if you have anything that you'd like to ask, feel free to jump right in.
Mr. President, would it be out of protocol for me to ask the gentleman, given what Shari is going to talk to us about is very relevant to them, to make sure they know that, to see if they want to stay? May I
I was
excuse for
thinking
a
that.
second?
Myself, actually.
Cool with that?
Would you like me to?
Yeah, why
Would you,
don't
John?
Absolutely.
Okay. Sorry for the pause, Shari.
Oh, it's no problem.
There must be a wire between our brains. I thought the same thing. I mean,
That's scary, though. It's good at this aspect, but it's scary at other times. I think we need to cut that wire.
But she's going to present information that can educate, on those topics.
You're writing a lot of stuff down over there. Yeah, you can. Yes, you can.
I'm out of breath, Shari. You're going to have to start.
I like
That's
the way
more
you,
running I've done in about 10 years right
I like the
there.
way you pitched that over to me. Good evening, everyone. How are you?
Great.
I am glad to be back before you. I'm going to go over a couple of housekeeping items and then visit along with Mr. Detweiler our 3-year diversity and inclusion plan. I believe you all have a copy of it, and then talk about what forward looks like for Fremont City School District. So just a note from the last time I was here with you, I am now a certified diversity and inclusion officer from the National Diversity and Inclusion Council. And I learned a lot of great information about that, about what diversity and inclusion is, and actually the new wave of diversity and inclusion. And the big one that I'm going to know, you'll hear me start talking about a lot in the community, is the diversity of the multi-generation and diversity of thought. That is something that is now being added to diversity and inclusion. And as we begin to have the discussion on inclusion, I just want to highlight again what diversity and inclusion is. It is working with and including the ethnic minority, those with disabilities, faith, gender, the LGBTQ plus community, and our veterans. So when I speak about diversity and inclusion, I'm speaking across all those populations. So if you look at the plan that we have here, our first year, 2021 was a year of planning. We spent time, and I did come have a conversation with you all at that time. We had courageous conversations within our school districts. We had a listening session to hear back from what the teachers were thinking and how they felt. We put those 4 questions out there. What does the school currently do well in terms of diversity and inclusion? What can we be better at in terms of diversity and inclusion? What needs to be eliminated? And general questions and concerns. Even at that time in the month of May, I went into every building and did a bias training, how to move success forward with implicit biases. If you have a moment, 2 seconds, I would like to do an activity with you all really quick. So if you look straight ahead, without moving your head, look as far as you can to the left. Think about what you see. Look as far as you can to the right. Think about what you see. At this time, I ask you to take your left hand and cover your left eye. Again, look as far as you can to the left. Think about what you see. And look as far as you can to the right. Think about what you see. You can put your hand down. You probably, when you looked to the left the first time, you probably had a broader area view than the second time when you covered your eyes. So with diversity and inclusion work, sometimes it's simply, do you see the world actually as it is, or through the lens that you're typically familiar with? So those are some of the conversations we had with our teachers. We received great feedback that came from every school building through an anonymous survey about the need for more understanding of cultural diversity, understanding how to teach those students that are coming out of poverty, understanding how to teach our students that are identifying as with our LGBTQ plus community, and providing resources for our student population that have disabilities. So with that said, we came back to the table. I had a conversation with school board member Viola Ray and had the opportunity to go to the Ohio School Board Association Black Caucus. And in that conversation with the city, we have been working on what we call the 7 pillars of inclusion. As you can see here tonight, there's a lot of questions when it comes to diversity and inclusion. We were looking at the feedback that we received from our teachers and what was the best fit to implement inclusion into our school district. So working with Mrs. Ray, we will have a 7 pillars of inclusion on November 9th at Terre Community College, the Kern Center. The keynote speaker is Governor Mike DeWine's Minority Liaison, Ronald C. Todd II. The 7 pillars of inclusion, and I'm going to talk about them tonight, are access, attitude, choices, partnerships, communication, policy, and opportunities. So we are going to implement the pillars on that framework that comes from Peter Dunn's. It was created in how to bring inclusion to sports, and we're using that to bring inclusion into the district. So after having those conversations, we also did write for a grant with diversifying our education profession. We also are working with Terre Community College and with a former Ross student to develop what we call a minority symposium that will work towards mental health and generational poverty in that summit. So now we looked at everything that we were working on and we thought, how can we lay this out? So if you look into year 1, which is 2021 to 2022, our focus area during professional development is bridges out of poverty. We will have 3 sessions of that throughout the year. We will work with our staff and our teachers about what Bridges Out of Poverty is, the different mental models, the poverty model, which is based on relationships, the middle class model, which is based on achievement, and the wealth model, which is based on connections. Looking at those models, we will work with what are the hidden rules within each mentality, what is the language, how does the family structure look like, and also what does it take to get out of poverty, and having the conversations about being resourced and under-resourced. Those are some of the constructs that are in the Bridges Out of Poverty framework.
Yep. And I might point out, you are a licensed trainer now, right?
Yes.
And I want to say, too, from my own experience, I had some of this as Ruby Payne's work, 20 years ago, probably maybe 25 years ago in this district as a teacher. And it was some of the most effective training I've ever had in my entire life, when it just talked about the impacts of poverty on expectations and how they interact with the school and how you communicate with the school. One of the best things I've ever done. So this isn't a new theory. And just so people know, this is established, solid, research-based stuff. And it's very effective. And I'm very excited to have Shari working with us on that. We also have Bonnie Weaver, who's also on staff, will be helping with this training as well, who's also a trained trainer.
If I may, Mr. Detweiler,
Yeah.
I also got to go through Bridges Out of Poverty. I'm excited to see this on here when I worked with Habitat for Humanity.
Okay.
And, the philosophies behind it are very enlightening.
Absolutely.
And I love that it refers to, at least in the context it was taught in that particular organization, that it's a hand up, not a hand out. It's how to help people rise up and come out of poverty, not just, receive something. And with that particular program, it's housing, but they had a 20-year mortgage that they had to pay back. It wasn't just a free house. It was, with some really good financial education.
Right.
So I love it.
Thank you. With that being said, with the 7 pillars of inclusion, a group of us, a team sat down, and we would like to implement pillars of access and attitude next year. I'll give you an example of what that looks like. We have what we call the 7 pillars of inclusiveness scoreboard, KPIs, that teachers can use for their classroom of how to implement inclusion. I use an example of implementing an inclusion from a diversity perspective. So access, providing equitable levels of access to our curriculum, programs and services, employment opportunities to support a diverse community. So when I step back and I look at access, I work with a lot of members in the community. A lot of times they don't have readable access to programs and services. And how do we make sure that they have that access? That's what that pillar starts to look at. How do you have access to make sure you understand all the college opportunities that are available? Access. If you go back, you even look at choices. That's one we're going to look at in a further year. We're going to review how do we provide choices to different populations? Are these the choices that we're just making, sitting at the table? But have we ever reached out into our community to see how they want to receive services and programs or notification? So these pillars will help teachers, staff members look across all populations and determine how am I giving access. In year 2.
If I may,
Yeah.
Sorry, real quick too, and then the other one, the attitude. This was a lively discussion. We talked about access and attitude. Actually, picking up the 7, kind of where to start. And I think the teachers said, you can maybe tell me if I'm wrong, but I think they said, one of them said, boy, if you don't have the attitude that you really would like to make a difference, then this work isn't going to go very far. So that's, I think, really important that we hit that right off the bat this year with.
Yes.
Just and in a non-threatening way and in a very inclusive way. And I think Shari's message of inclusion meaning everyone that's been, marginalized in any way whatsoever. So we're excited about that.
Yes. And we play the activity. It goes back to the hand over the eye. Did I unintentionally exclude based on my upbringing and how I was reared? And then the inclusion framework is just showing you to remember the population I discussed, how are they apart, and to make sure that we're not excluding them. So then in year 2, which will be 2022, 2023, our focus will be on equity, equality, and justice, microaggressions, and our inclusive hiring practices. And the team decided at that time, in terms of the 7 pillars, we will focus on choices, partnerships, communication, and policy. Then in 2023-24, year 3, We will focus on privilege, community engagement, and parent involvement. And the last pillar would be opportunities.
Thank you, Shari. Also, in our program, we've gotten a grant to start a Rising Educators program, which will start here in the middle school. It's basically trying to find kids who are interested in an educational path. And it's a branch of what used to be the Future Teachers of America, which has been morphed into this other, or maybe joined with another organization. It's called Rising Educators. So this year we'll have a club, basically like a pre-teaching kind of club at the middle school. Hope to find students who are interested. And for the first time in my career, I think I mentioned this last time, I now have some spots unfilled as school starts. So, and that's happening all over the state. There is a real shortage, and there is definitely a shortage of students of color and minority representation. So all those things we hope to at least proactively try to address with this program. And then we'll grow that up to the high school with, the club activities and so forth, and continue to grow that. So pretty excited about that as well.
I think it's great that we get younger kids knowing what it's like.
Yeah.
My daughter's in education at Heidelberg, but my wife is a teacher. So she was able to see that and realized I like this because I help my mom in the classroom, and that's something that I would enjoy, but we had access to it.
Yes.
Where a lot of kids wouldn't. So now having something, especially at middle school age, it starts to get their head going. I mean, just like we talk about STEM and engineering and trying to get kids' brains working in that, you've said for how many years now that 10 years from now, there's going to be a huge shortage of teachers all over the country. So what a great way to introduce them to that. So they start thinking of that. And then, with the CCP classes that we have and everything that can help anyone who wants to do that. And now with the partnership with Tara and Heidelberg also for the education program, a lot of pathways for them where they don't have to go far away from home. They're getting used to it. They're getting introduced to it.
No surprises, right?
Yeah. And I think it's a great way to open kids' eyes to see, my wife's a teacher. It's not a bad gig.
No, not a bad gig.
And it can be so rewarding. She loves it,
Noble
so
work. Yeah.
If you're good at that, man, what a way to do it.
Yeah.
I agree, Tom. What I also like that's included with that, and that there's more than one path, there's more than one journey, is the introduction into skilled trades and some of the other vocations that are out there. Not everything requires a bachelor's degree to provide for your community and for your family. And I love that we're exposing kids to that. I know Tony Walker and John Cahill and, quite a few are trying to introduce those things to students. And I wanted to tie something that you reported on with a legislative piece that I brought up probably late last year. You had mentioned in the populations and everything that diversity covers. It includes faith, it includes these other things. If you remember back to an initiative the state put together, the region of the Amish country here in Ohio, in a time when the world shut down, and the only way that you'd have access to education, to healthcare, to any of that was if you had internet access.
Mm-hmm.
So based on the culture of that community, had these conversations not happened, the access wouldn't have been put there and they'd have been shut out for a very long time had we stayed with assumptions about that particular faith with thought of electricity and modernization and that sort of thing. And it was a really great time that the public sector of government and private business worked together and connected that whole very large section of our state to the modern world so that their children could be educated and they could have access to healthcare. So it's huge. It reaches a lot of what you're accomplishing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Shari? Also very exciting, Shari is traveling down to Columbus this fall to present with the School Board Association representing the city of Fremont and Fremont City Schools. So we're very excited about that.
Thank you.
Kind of show some of the work we're doing. So looking forward to it. All right.
Thank
Sorry, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
While you're packing up and getting out of here, I just want to say, every time I talk to Shari, she's on like 5 more committees. I mean, she's become a hot topic in town just because people recognize there's some work to do here, and we're doing it. Thank you, Shari.
Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
You too.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, facilities in operation.
Yes, please. And this is another big topic. If I get everybody's attention, I'm going to go through this just so our community kind of knows what we're doing. I've had the board abreast of this for a few weeks. 10 years ago, the district renovated the space that the district office is in now, where my office is. It was the old ESC, for those old timers, right? So the deal back then was we would have the exchange for remodeling that space would have 10 years of very low rent. And that was with the commissioners who owned the building at the time. Well, 10 years is up. And also it has changed ownership. It's in a private ownership now. So we have a different landlord than the commissioners. So the rent was going to go up like by 3 times. And it would actually be a little bit even less still than what market value is in town per square foot. We did an analysis of all of that. So in our conversations with our landlord about what the rent would be, he mentioned, would you consider purchasing the building? And I thought, well, no, there's not. That's just really not. We don't, we're not buying things. It's not really good for us. But we started to put a pencil to it. It really made a lot of sense. We also would still need a place to go. I mean, if we didn't stay where we were, we would have to find a space. One space, and we talked about this before, open to us or available to us are the classrooms that are above the wrestling space, the new area that we built with the pool, right? The Fremont Area Foundation so generously helped us build. There's 7 classrooms up there, and it would be a little tight. It'd be less than space than we have now, but we thought we could get in there. So we started doing estimates on what it would take to renovate that space to make it, usable for our purposes, changing it basically from classroom space to office space. And we didn't get anything less than $350,000 to renovate that space. One estimate from an architect was $1.1 million to make it really nice to have, and the space we have now is beautiful. I mean, it's nice. So when you look at the potential raise in rent, the potential cost of renovating a space for us to move to that is ours, that idea of buying that building all of a sudden came a little more attractive. The purchase price is $372,500. That right now, with the proposed rent from our landlord, would be a 4-year payoff. So then in 4 years, paying the rent, we would have that much dollar amount. So it seems to be a pretty wise move. The other thing I believe it does is it maintains those classrooms for student use. And I think that's important also. There's always an after-school program looking for a space, or a tutoring room after school, or, we've talked about the idea of maybe alternative school or student with severe needs, or, there's just something that you could always do with that space for students, and it's on campus where half of our student body exists. So I just think it's wise to do that. So tonight, I have in this next resolution, and with the conversations with the board, the resolution to purchase that property. And just once again for the community, rationale being there's a 4-year payoff, the rent would go up anyway, and we'd still have to go somewhere. So we would be, spending this money to renovate a space, and I think to purchase this, stay where we are in a beautiful facility. Also in a district this size, it's nice to have a centralized location as well. I can get to Atkinson and Croghan pretty quickly from where we are now, not so much if I'm here. So, or if we're on this campus. So I think there's a lot of good things there, and I think financially it pencils out. So just want to kind of explain that before we get to this resolution. Would love any questions, but we can take that, I guess, as part of the motion for a vote. So item 1 is purchase real property resolution.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve item 1?
I move to approve.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, bye. You
Moved
first.
by Mrs. Ray,
I'll second.
second by Ms. Laird. Okay, any questions regarding this motion?
I think the other thing we have to remember too in this is there are some current renters in that property
Thank you.
that will
Thank you.
bring income into the district
Thank you, Mr.
by
Price.
having those
Absolutely.
the license bureau and the BMV there. So
Actually, 3 tenants, yes.
3 tenants.
Yeah,
So
who are currently paying. That's right. Thank you. So once this building is paid off, there's actually an income source. Thank you. I failed to say that. Very important.
just so everybody listening understands, we're not booting anybody out.
No. We'll be the friendliest landlords.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
I totally agree with, I like the central location
Yeah.
for our families. Rather than come into a building, you have to go upstairs and go around and about. They can actually come and be serviced right there at a central location. And it is beautiful. And
It
I've
is.
been in it
It's
3 times
right.
in different positions.
Yeah. Right. Oh, in 3 different iterations of its existence, right?
Yes.
Right.
Well, the administration, the board has been renting space since forever.
Yeah. You're right.
House,
It's true. Even back to the Vanguard days.
office.
Right.
Well, long before that, at the old Gusdorf building.
We didn't own that one either.
No, we didn't.
Really?
No.
No, we were renting there too, on Park Avenue. So since the beginning of time, pretty much.
Which you were there.
He was there for, right. He witnessed. Right.
And it makes total sense to own the place.
Yeah.
So with that, roll call, please.
Mrs. Ray,
Yes.
Ms. Laird,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mr. Gorbutz,
Yes. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Just so you know, too, I did broach this with our 2 union presidents and ran the numbers with them, just so they, fully knew what our plans were, and they were on board as well. So just want to make sure we're trying to communicate. All right. Next is if we can get our kids to school, with your approval, we have our bus routes ready. It's just a monumental task. You can imagine there's preschool routes and St. Joe routes, and there's shuttles from here and there, and I got after school programs, and Justin Eric does just a fabulous job. He's a gem. So he has our bus routes ready to roll, and there'll be a couple bumps, but we will have school. So with your approval.
Okay, can we have a motion to approve item 2?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Price,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Laird. Are there any discussion items regarding item 2? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Ms. Laird,
Yes.
Ms. Ray,
Yes.
Mr. Gorbutz,
Yes, motion carried.
Thank you very much. Item 4. I'm sorry, item 3. I skipped one here. Consider approval of contract with William Bray to be our sports information director for Ross. This is paid out of Mr. Burnt's athletic department funds. This is not a new position. We've had this position for a few years, and it works very well because there's just so many outlets for stories, social media, and so forth. We just weren't getting, we believe, the exposure. Not anybody's fault. There's just so many avenues and ways to get stories out. We just weren't getting what we thought our students deserve. So he had this position created maybe 3 years ago. I was here, so probably 3 years or less. And it's just a new person doing it. So not a new position, but one we've already had.
Okay, can we have a motion to approve item 3?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Laird, second by Mrs. Ray. I will say that on social media sites, he does a very good job writing a summary of our events.
Yeah.
Which is good because the news messenger doesn't seem to be covering us very thoroughly. I'm saying that not to be critical. I don't know what their thinking is. It's probably none of our business what their thinking is. But we don't get any coverage.
Mm-hmm.
So this is good to have somebody doing this.
I agree. He's a very fine gentleman, does a great job if you've seen his posts. Dedicated little giant himself. His dad was the track coach for how long, Alex?
Probably 25 years.
Right.
The Norm Bray relays.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I didn't connect that.
Yes. So
Yeah.
we're very lucky.
So, okay. Roll call, please.
Ms. Laird,
Yes.
Mrs. Ray,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mr. Gorbetz.
Yes. Motion carries.
Item 4, please note that we did have a walk-on there, Terry Fielding, who was at our Juvenile Justice Center, is resigning, and also Shanna Petaway, with your approval. Item 5, continuing in our personnel matters, we have a couple appointments. We have Madison Beeman, teacher, she'll be 2nd grade at Lutz, Chase Green, 5th grade at Krogan, and Emma Reinick, also 5th grade at Krogan. Continuing on, item 5, we have a couple certified tutors, Jordan Kramer and Sherry Hinkle. A couple certified staff substitutes, Sally Adams, Allison Adelsberger, Michelle Merrill, Tiffany Peck, and Nicholas Hoffman. And then item B there, for custodial 1 position, Julia Hernandez. Support staff substitute, Alexandra Colvin, Julia Hernandez. Then item 6 are our focus intervention tutors. These are the ones that we've been trying to fill. This is COVID dollars at work. This is that position we were talking about. We're kind of sprinkling them throughout the district to be ready to help kids catch up. So been working on that for a while. I might add, just while I'm in this position or in this spot, some of these have come off our sub list, which kind of distresses our sub list even more, but we think this is a much better use for our students. Item 7 is a status change then. Marcy Headley has proven her years of experience and needs to be moved on the steps appropriately. Thank you.
Okay, can we have a motion to approve items 5, 6, and 7?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Ray and seconded by Mr. Price. Any concerns regarding items 5, 6, and 7?
You said earlier you said we still have some openings.
I do. Middle school art and an intervention specialist still unfilled. So we're still scrambling, trying to do what we can, but
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm threatening to bring Mr. Gorbetz out of retirement for that IS position. I don't know what his license or stature is, but
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Ray,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Ms. Laird,
Yes.
Mr. Gorbetz.
Yes. Motion carries.
thank you very much.
Okay, fiscal matters, report of the treasurer.
Tonight, I'm just going to go over our monthly report for the month of July, the first month into the new fiscal year. It's actually doing pretty well for us, so we're off to a good start. Revenue was up due to we got that bigger income tax payment, which was very good for the district. We're very happy to see. We've also we'll see a little bit of an increase to the fair funding school formula changing. Not a large increase, but I think it's always positive if we get an increase. Expenses were a little bit higher in some areas because we have more place to store things this year. So we've bought more supplies in bulk, and we'll be able to disperse those more out throughout the year. So supplies were up a little bit, salary and benefits were up, which that's just kind of the normal. But purchase services were down. We were able to charge that off some different grants. So overall, expenses were down for us, and it was a good month.
If I mention just on that storage, for the first time in our career, and maybe Alex could attest to this, we actually have some real storage now, using the Legion, the old Legion building for some real storage has allowed us to buy a truckload of paper towels instead of a pallet at a time. And you can just the savings and scale there of purchasing at bulk. So like Megan said, it looks a little expensive front loaded, but there'll be less purchasing down the line because we now have, boxes of paper and paper towels and toilet paper, things that we just didn't have space for before. Very excited about that.
So it's a good first month of the fiscal year. We're moving in the office and making sure everything gets done. So I just have that tonight for the board's approval.
Yeah. Okay, can we have a motion to approve item 8?
So moved.
Mr. Price,
Second.
second by Ms. Laird. Before we vote on item 8, this is a very hectic time of the year, and we're a little bit short in personnel right now in the office.
Yes.
You give us a little description, a little summary of how things are going.
Stepping into this position, I knew it was going to be difficult. Since we were going to be down already in the office, and then also absorbing my position, my former position as well. And then unfortunately, I have a staff member who is not doing well medically. But so that's forcing all of the girls to take on more. But luckily, we are using our different resources. The guys at Golden Gate are helping take on some of those other roles. And the really good thing about them doing that is, yes, they'll do it, but then they go through and say, hey, this is how we did it. This is what's going on. So while I'm not physically doing some of the things, I'm still being able to pick up and learn what the different things are that, due to me covering other areas, I'm missing out on. But like I said, they are really good about showing us how to do some of those other stuff. We also have a experienced payroll person who also has been coming in and helping do some of the quarter end things, year end, just to help fill that gap that we have currently right now. The girls in my office are doing amazing covering. So there is a little bit of, things aren't getting answered right away, but we do make sure that everything's still getting done. So you just kind of have to come in and say, okay, what's the most important task of the day? And then go from there.
So we're keeping pace, but we're getting help.
Yeah. Yep.
Which is exactly what we anticipated and expected to happen. So.
And we all recognize too, it's not a long-term. So, I mean, we're not in a position where we go long-term
Right.
for sure.
Yes.
There's a giant effort going on, a little giant effort going on in the treasurer's office. It's commendable, but certainly not sustainable.
No,
So
that's definitely not sustainable.
Megan, I hope as you go through this difficult time, if you find that you need resources, that's what the board is here for you, in the support. So feel free to put a plan together, bring it forward, and we'll help you.
I'm very fortunate that directors are very helpful, and they're like, everybody's been very understanding. If it's, okay, I can't get to this right now, when do you absolutely need it by, so that we can make sure we get it done in time, but we can't do it exactly when you're asking for it. So everybody has been very great and supportful of the staff. So.
Okay, roll call.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Ms. Laird?
Yes.
Mrs. Ray?
Yes.
Mr. Gorbutz?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, board member communications and information. Ms. Laird.
Well, I always want to thank the residents that come with the courage, as you said, John, to speak. It does take courage to do that. And I want to thank Shari for coming to give us an update, and then so that all of our residents at home that can come back and take a look at what the meeting was can be informed. And I think they're going to like what they hear and what's happening. And hopefully with that little comparison, they can see how those kinds of conversations become legislation, become action, and help people, just like with the internet service. of that whole section of the state that really didn't have much. So really what she's doing is huge. I'd like to welcome Bill Bray. I think he'll be an asset. And that's all I have for this evening.
Chris?
I also want to thank the community members for coming in. Also for Shari coming in and giving us an update. She's a busy lady.
She's a lady. You are right.
And we're very grateful to have her as part of our city and our community, but also as part of our school district. So,
Tom, she was getting so many requests from businesses that she started running like centralized sessions at Terra with Terra's cooperation so that more than one company could come to her in order to maximize her time in some of these trainings. So just an example.
And I think it's important that we see as a community, there are community members that saw the need for this. I mean, that's why they're reaching out for her, and that's why she is so busy.
That's right.
So that's great for the whole community, not just school district, not just city government, everything. It's just going to make this community even stronger. So thank you for her for coming in with the update and everything. School's starting. Teachers are back tomorrow. My wife's not happy.
I bet not. Home crying on her pillow, I'm sure.
At least as of right now, we're a week away from kids coming in, basically, that it is school as almost usual.
Right.
So I know my wife is excited too, since she was an online teacher last year.
Right.
She is excited to have 20 kids sitting in her seats in her classroom.
Bodies. Yeah.
So, that's what they want to do. So they don't want to do it online. They want to be in front of the kids and have that interaction. So let's pray that this school year goes well, that everything does well, but everybody got through last year. So that's a good thing. So that's all I have.
Right.
Would be Miss Mouth Almighty here. I'm so excited over our game Friday night. It was so exciting.
It was so exciting.
At the last minute, I said, guys, excuse my expression, it ain't over till it's over. And they finished up. We won our first game. So congratulations to our little Giants. Go Little Giants. Also, thanks to our guests for coming, our community guests. And, we all have our ideas and our thoughts. And obviously we care about our kids. So, they're expressing their care for our kids in our community. Also, Mrs. Fielding is very special to me. Mm-hmm. When I first started with Fremont School, I was in intervention and I worked in her classroom. Such an enthusiastic, such an exciting. She made every day a big production for each child. So thanks for her many years of her service, and she will be missed. Also, I do want to express our condolence to Robin Moore, who's very just been wonderful in our sports and in our district, and on the loss of her son. So as a board, I'd like to, just express our condolence to her and her family, and our prayers. And Jan Sorg, who is Karen had a stroke, so his wife. Oh, no. Yes, she had a very severe stroke. So anyway, keep her in your thoughts and prayers. He would be sitting here. I think it was probably a couple days ago.
Oh my.
Yes, so she's not doing very well at this particular time. So we want to maybe reach out to John. And I'd like to thank Megan. Gosh, it's like a baby being born and having to start kindergarten and first and second and third and fourth and fifth grade all at the same time. And you've done a wonderful job keeping us afloat and keeping our district safe and above water. So thank you for that. Thanks, John, for all that you're doing to keep us going and still keep a smile on your face. Don't know how, but hey, we'll take it. And that's probably all that I have to say tonight. Thanks to Shari also. Yeah. Wonderful. I will add to that, not only is she around here recognized for her skills and her presentations, but was very impressed at the state level. We're talking 88 counties. she is one of the presenters, which is not an easy thing to do. I mean, you have to really prove that you know your stuff and that you're going to do a good job. So that's a plus for us,
For sure.
that for her to present. So that's all.
I always equate our school year with the gestation period. A woman carrying a child for
Okay.
9 months. 2 years ago, the baby was born prematurely. Last year, the baby had problems.
Yep.
Let's hope for a normal
Yes.
9 months. But if there isn't a normal 9 months, we need to be on the ball, sharp,
Yes, sir.
and call the shot the way we have to do, even if it's not what we really want to do. Need to keep an eye on things in other parts of the country where schools have opened. It's not gone particularly well. So we have to keep our eyes and ears open. I would like to thank our guest, Sherry, especially. I think I said this once before. You know, we addressed these issues a long, long time ago in this district, but we didn't have anybody to do it. We talked about it. We all knew that it was there, but we never had anybody to coordinate any effort. So it's very nice that we do have somebody now in cooperation with the city that can do that job and do it well. So with that, I guess we'll see you at 8 o'clock tomorrow.
Good question. I'm sorry. We didn't do the teacher thing. I forgot about it until Vi mentioned hers.
Right. Can we just do this on record?
I'm fine with that. Are you
Chantel,
okay?
give me your favorite teacher and then why they were chosen.
Okay. I was in middle school. It's
Okay.
called junior high back then. And her name was Sophia Drager.
I know. I taught with her.
Yes.
Yes, she's fantastic. And
Fantastic.
oh my goodness. So her writing class was wonderful. She was language arts teacher. And the thing that I remember specifically was the relationship that she built with us. She had us do journaling. And I must have not paid attention at the time that she said we were going to turn these in. So I did the journaling for real. It was real stuff.
Ooh, the real personal stuff, huh?
Yes, you know, of a teenage girl, middle school girl. So I'm sure that was some fun reading. But what I really liked, so she had a good time with that. On almost every page, when she turned it back, she wrote a note to me and guided me on those things that I was writing about. And it was just really, it let me know that I was thought of, that I was cared for and loved by my teacher. And because of that, I listened to her much more fully than perhaps some others. So,
Thank you.
mm-hmm.
Bryce?
Mine was a high school teacher. I don't know her first name because it was always Mrs. Detweiler. She was an English teacher I graduated from Clyde, so she was my I had the privilege of having her 2 years because she moved up a grade. So I had her 2 years while I was in high school. I didn't think it was a privilege at the time. She was as stubborn as I was. High school to me was a big social gathering that I enjoyed going to, but schoolwork was not the strong point. And she made sure that if I was going to be in her class, that I had to work. She was probably the hardest teacher I've ever had, possibly even through college. I would put that in there. I liked a lot of teachers, but I still remember her teachings today. Yeah. So I think that was good for me that someone put me in my place. So
A good teacher will live in your head forever.
she does. She does.
And in your heart. Yeah.
Well, my teacher was, my favorite teacher was my fourth grade teacher, Mrs. Jan Petro. And I, believe it or not, was very shy and introverted. And she had a way of, and a little self-esteem problem, she had a way of encouraging me when we sang. Back in those days, there were pianos in the room, and we sang songs. And she discovered I was a natural alto, and she always would call me her little songbird. That doesn't really mean a lot, but just the fact that I had that attention, and she found a way to make me feel special within myself. And I will always remember that. And I remember the songs that we sang, but I won't sing them right
come
now.
on, Violet. Let's hear it.
That's tomorrow morning. Have her do it tomorrow morning.
I'll take the baritone part if you want to take the alto.
Yes.
What was her last name, Vi? I'm sorry.
Mrs. Jan Petro. Jan Petro.
Jim Petro. Got it. Okay. Mr. Gorbett shared his own, but go ahead if you would.
I didn't know we were doing this tonight.
Well, now we are. I just hijacked me. Actually, Chantel.
Was it Moses?
Oh,
I had to say it.
Wow.
I had to say it just because it's Alex.
That was my second one.
And he'll get me for it because I'll have to give him some cookies now. So.
Well, my favorite teacher in high school was one of the phys ed teachers. His name was Coach Hess. His nickname was Dutch. And he was our varsity basketball coach. He also was the varsity soccer coach. He was the varsity lacrosse coach. And he was the school's athletic director. So he had quite a few jobs back in the 1960s when I went through high school. He was very old school because there was no such thing as old school back then. Now we look at it as old school. Back then it was
just
very
school.
normal.
It was school, right?
School. It was very structured. It was very tough. He was very skilled at holding his players, his students accountable. He always made it clear where he stood. And he was an excellent teacher on top of all of that. And he was a great basketball coach. But beneath that toughness was a very caring person. And he really went the extra mile for all of his students, all of his players. When he came into a room, you knew he was there, even if you weren't looking. During holiday seasons, there were lines of former students outside of his office waiting to visit, some of whom he was the toughest on during their school years, during their playing days. And he was very successful. When I went through school, the basketball team had a record of 74-11 and won 2 county championships, which is quite remarkable. At the 50th high school reunion 5 years ago, he was invited. He was the only teacher of that era that was actually invited to the reunion. And he came with his wife from Florida. And 2 weeks later, he passed away. So, that's my favorite teacher.
Good. Well, tomorrow we're going to celebrate teachers, so that's the theme tomorrow. So look forward to seeing you there.
You ever have your mother as a teacher? She was my teacher for 5 months.
I'm sure.
I had all
I'm sure you both learned a lot during those 5 months. Okay. At this time, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Price,
Second.
second by Mrs. Ray. Roll call, please.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mr. Ray,
Yes.
Miss Laird,
Yes.
Mr. Gorbetz.
Yes. Carrie. Our next meeting is in 2 weeks, hopefully. Won't be a need for anything between now and then.
Well, just one quick question. That would be Labor Day.
No.
2 weeks would be Labor
I
Day.
think it's the week after that, Tom. Thank you. Good catch. Let me look. $13.
13th.
Oh, wait. Yeah, 13. Yeah. So thank you. 3 weeks.
We're meeting in 3 weeks.
3 weeks from today.